a funny thing. Like, you think people walk up to you and they're like, oh, you just won a Grand Prix, oh, yeah. And like, the reality is your inbox doesn't fill up. Your parking spot's exactly where it was when you get back. And yeah, it's kind of more a sense of it's more self-fulfillment and self kind of like, cool, we did this, and now let's see if we can maybe do it again, or let's see what we can do next. My personal kind of approach to things is I need a bit more time, and I like to simmer. I'm not exactly like a quick fire, like, hey, why don't we do this? Hey, why don't we do that? Hey, hey, hey. I kind of need to kind of ingest everything and just kind of let it sit for a while. And then it's normally kind of day 3 that things kind of starts coming out and you start seeing the stuff. And I think you program yourself. You program yourself to kind of get the obvious stuff out the way so that you can look deeper and get into the more interesting territories. And I think that that's something that comes with time, and you need time in order to get through the initial burst of bad ideas. Deadlines? You can't rush things, and that's ironic because this industry is very much about rushing and getting things done incredibly quickly. So it also depends on a client that gives you the space to kind of, and understands the process, that sometimes you can't hurry things, and that you need to just take a step back and say, okay, the guys aren't somewhere and they need that extra couple of days or hours or whatever it might be. And aside from that, you need a culture within your agency that recognizes that as well. Because if the agency doesn't recognize it, chances are the client's not going to recognize it. I think that ideal clients are the clients that can step out of their own box and into their target market's box. And I think that ideal clients are clients that have the bravery to kind of recognize good work and work that they might not want, but that they know that they need. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, the reason radio is so accessible is because the turnaround time is literally like, if you get briefed in the morning, you can have something in the afternoon on air done. And I think that, again, like, work falls into different categories of priority. If your only medium is radio and you need to build a brand, you should definitely be taking the time to craft it the way you would craft a TV ad. Whereas if it's something that needs to go, you need to make it as good as it can be and let it go. But yeah, I think that as a whole, even on the TV side of things, anything, South Africa, it feels like our work is very rushed, and it's not through oversight or anything. I think it's just the nature of what demands are out there, and that we have to meet those demands. And it's the whole kind of value chain of things, where it's the conceptualization is rushed, the production is rushed, the after party is rushed, everything is rushed. So the more time you get with anything, the better. And obviously with radio, if the writing process was longer, if there was more time to pilot and more time to experiment with music, sound effects, whatever your script needed, the end product would always be better. Everything's better with time.
I'm never a fan of putting too much information, like a telephone number. I think you need to pick one thing, like an email address or a telephone number or one piece of information. But in terms of a narrative style, I do think that lends itself to theatre of the mind, because it's not just sound effects that paint a picture. It's words, and nothing to say that if you have something that's very copy heavy, you don't use sound effects very often in combination. So I think good writing paints pictures. So that's good radio. In terms of coming up with ideas, it's incredibly old school. We don't even think about radio specifically. We're like, okay, here's the brief, here's the brand, what's the insight? And like, we try to find an interesting way in. And I think, like, if you don't have an interesting way in, if you don't have an interesting idea to start with, it doesn't matter how great your execution is. You're already dead in the water. So spend a lot of time coming up with a really fresh insight and a really interesting way of interpreting the brief. That is, I think, probably the best thing you can do. And then when it comes to writing, I think it's so weird. I think you have to be a talented writer to start with. And that's part of a bigger lesson. I think writers need to read more, they need to write more. I think we're lucky in South Africa. We've got great kind of old school writers. A lot of our kind of ECDs and CDs are really good writers. So if you're a young writer, position yourself so that you can work under one of these people and learn from them, because that's what I did many years ago. I worked under great writers, and I think just develop your skill. And then, as I was saying earlier, I think try find a voice. It's so easy, or so much easier, to write if you feel that you're writing something that you love, and know what your strengths are. I think the result of that is that when you're writing a lot of radio, you're going to be kind of well practiced at it, and there's a really good chance that, of your year's worth of work, that there's going to be some real gems in there.